At my sister's wedding, my mother called me a failure in front of hundreds of guests. But just minutes later, I picked up the microphone, and the entire ballroom rose to their feet in applause. If it were you, would you stay silent or stand up and reclaim your voice? Have you ever been looked down on by your own family simply because you didn't follow the path they set out for you? Have you ever sacrificed quietly, only to be labeled useless for it? Share your thoughts and your story in the comments below, because someone out there might need to hear that they're not alone. And don't leave just yet, because this story isn't just about betrayal or a dramatic wedding twist. It's about the long journey to reclaim your worth after years of being overlooked. Stay until the end. I believe you'll see yourself somewhere in this story. My name is Elena Parker, and for a long time, that name meant nothing special in my family. I'm the eldest daughter, the one who dropped out of college to work 3 jobs a day, the one who brewed coffee in the morning, cleaned houses in the afternoon, folded clothes at night. The one my mother introduced to others with a sugar-coated title. She does something in the arts, I think. I didn't have a fancy degree. I didn't have a lawyer husband. I didn't have the kind of praise that floated freely around our family dinners. But I did have one thing, a small dream. And I nurtured it with my own 2 hands, night after night, while the world slept and no one was watching. And then, one day, they had no choice but to see me. Truly see me. The story I'm about to tell you isn't a fairy tale. It's the truth. A truth hidden behind polite words that cut deep, behind careless glances, behind a silk dress I designed myself, worn at a wedding I quietly paid for. If you've ever been made to feel like the invisible one in your own family, then listen closely. Because this might not just be my story, it might be yours too. I always thought Boston winters were beautiful, even when they cut through my thin jacket as I trudged home after my 3rd shift of the day. Snow crunched beneath my worn boots as I fumbled for the keys to our apartment, the same small 3-bedroom we'd lived in since Dad died 4 years ago. "Elena, is that you?" Mom's voice carried from the kitchen. She never asked with hope, only verification. "Yes, Mom." I hung my jacket by the door, noticing Brittany's expensive wool coat already there, perfectly pressed. My little sister was home from law school for the weekend. The apartment smelled like pot roast, Mom's special recipe, the one she only made when Brittany visited. I found them at the kitchen table, wine glasses half empty, laughing over something on Brittany's phone. "Oh, Elena," Mom said, her smile fading slightly. "There's a plate for you in the microwave." I nodded, too tired to speak. 3 jobs in one day will do that to you. Morning barista shifts, afternoon cleaning houses, and evening retail. My fingernails still had traces of coffee grounds despite how hard I'd scrubbed them. "How are your classes going, Britt?" I asked, heating my dinner. Brittany flicked her perfect blonde hair over her shoulder. "Professor Hawkins says I'm on track for valedictorian." She didn't look up from her phone. "He's already talking about clerkship opportunities." "That's our pride and joy." Mom beamed, squeezing Brittany's hand. The unspoken comparison hung in the air like a fog I couldn't escape. I sat down with my lukewarm dinner, knowing what was coming next. "And you, Elena?" "Still." Mom paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound judgmental and failing. Working at those little jobs?" There it was. The same conversation we'd had weekly since I dropped out of college to help support the family after Dad's cancer took both him and our savings. Someone had to pay for Brittany's education after his life insurance barely covered his medical debts. "Same jobs, Mom." I forced a smile. "The coffee shop gave me more morning shifts." "Oh." Her disappointment was palpable. "Well, at least it's something." Later that night, in the privacy of my bedroom, the smallest in the apartment, I opened my laptop and logged into my online store's administrator panel. orders had doubled since last week. The notification count showed 73 new messages from customers and 3 partnership inquiries from major retailers. I touched the small silver pendant at my throat, one of my first LunaSpark designs. Dad had always called me his little moon, saying I shone brightest when no one was looking. No one knew about my business. Not Mom, not Brittany. Not about the night classes I took online while they thought I was working extra shifts. Not about the tiny office I'd rented downtown where I created handcrafted jewelry that was now being featured in fashion magazines. Why tell them? So Mom could dismiss it as a cute little hobby? So Brittany could make it about her somehow? I opened a message from Vogue requesting an exclusive interview and smiled to myself. Let them think I was a failure. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. At 2 a.m., with the rest of the apartment quiet, I was wide awake. My desk lamp cast a small circle of light as I carefully placed moonstone beads along silver wire. This piece, a custom order for a bride in California, would pay our electric bill this month, though Mom would never know that. My phone buzzed with a notification. Scrolling through Instagram, my breath caught. Fashion influencer Aria Martinez had tagged LunaSpark in a post showcasing my celestial collection. Her 3 million followers were now commenting and sharing. Holy! I whispered, watching the notification count climb. By morning, my inventory would be sold out. 4 years ago, after dropping out of business school, I'd started making jewelry at the same desk. Back then, it was just a way to feel creative while working soul-crushing jobs. I taught myself everything: photography, marketing, web design, through YouTube tutorials and library books. Now, LunaSpark had 6 part-time employees and a real office space in a converted warehouse in South Boston. I checked my schedule for tomorrow. After my morning barista shift, I'd skip lunch and rush to meet with a potential investor. He'd found my pieces in a boutique in Manhattan and tracked me down, impressed by the craftsmanship and brand story. My phone buzzed again. An email from my business account. Another purchase order from a boutique in Chicago. I allowed myself a small smile, thinking about the irony. Mom was constantly lamenting my wasted potential, while downstairs in that same kitchen, I'd negotiated a 5-figure wholesale contract last week while she thought I was on break from the coffee shop. Sometimes I wondered why I kept it all secret. Pride, maybe? Or perhaps the quiet certainty that the moment I revealed my success, they'd find a way to make it about Brittany, or worse, try to take credit somehow. I'd built this myself, one beat at a time, one sleepless night after another. A text message lit up my screen. It was Mia, my assistant, confirming that our shipment to Nordstrom had been received, another milestone I couldn't share. The hardest part wasn't the secrecy. It was watching Mom hand money to Brittany for books when my sister was actually using it for weekend trips with friends. It was sitting through family dinners where Mom asked if I'd considered going back to school while I was already running a 6-figure business. But every time I thought about telling them, something held me back. Maybe I wasn't ready to share this part of myself, this proof that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. Or maybe I was waiting for the right moment, when the revelation would be undeniable. I closed my laptop and finished the necklace, holding it up to the light. Someday, they'd see who I really was. And when that day came, I wanted there to be no question about what I'd built. The invitation arrived on embossed cardstock with gold foil lettering. Together with their families, Brittany Parker and Jason Reynolds request the honor of your presence. I traced my finger over the words, noting the weight of the paper. Expensive, like everything else about my sister's life. My phone rang. Brittany's name flashed on the screen. "Did you get it?" she asked without greeting. "The invitation?" "Just now. Congratulations, Britt." "Thanks," she said, her voice brimming with self-satisfaction. Jason's family is handling most of it. The Reynolds don't cut corners. I knew all about the Reynolds, old Boston money, banking, real estate, politics. They had fingers in every pie. Jason was the golden boy, Harvard Law just like Brittany, a match made in elitist heaven. Mom is beside herself, Brittany continued. She's already bought 3 different outfits for the rehearsal dinner. That's great, I said, calculating how much those outfits cost against our utility bills. Bills I'd quietly paid last month when Mom was short. Listen, Elena. Her voice sharpened. You'll need to get something appropriate to wear. Nothing, you know. Nothing what? I knew exactly what she meant, but I wanted to hear her say it. She sighed impatiently. Nothing like what you normally wear. This is at the Fairmont Copley Plaza. Jason's family knows everyone who matters in Boston. I looked down at my faded jeans and the simple white t-shirt I wore when designing. On my workbench sat 3 custom pieces I was making for a celebrity attending the Met Gala. I'll find something suitable, I said evenly. And maybe do something with your hair? Those natural waves are so casual. The same natural waves that a style magazine had recently described as effortlessly chic in their profile of anonymous designer EP of Luna Spark. I'll get my hair done, I promised, already envisioning exactly what I'd wear. Something from my upcoming winter collection, perhaps. Something undeniably elegant. Great. Oh, and Elena? Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Mom's been telling people you're in arts administration instead of, making coffee and folding sweaters. The anger flared so suddenly I had to take a deep breath. Has she now? It's just easier this way. The Reynolds are kind of snobs about that stuff. She paused. Try not to mention your jobs if anyone asks. After we hung up, I sat looking at the invitation for a long time. 4 years of invisibility. 4 years of being the family disappointment. 4 years of smiling through their condescension while secretly building something beautiful. I opened my laptop and pulled up the sales figures for the quarter. Luna Spark had just broken $1 million in revenue. Next week, I was meeting with investors interested in helping me expand internationally. For the first time, I wondered if perhaps this wedding wasn't just my sister's special day, but might also be the perfect stage for a revelation of my own. The Fairmont Copley Plaza ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and floral arrangements that probably cost more than my first month's rent at my workspace. I smoothed down my dress, a silver column of silk that I'd designed myself, with hand-beaded details along the neckline that caught the light when I moved. Elena, you actually look presentable, Mom said when she spotted me, genuine surprise in her voice. She was resplendent in designer blue, her hair freshly colored to hide any hint of gray. Where did you get that dress? I know people, I answered vaguely, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing server. The ceremony had been picture perfect, of course. Brittany floating down the aisle in a gown that cost more than a car. Jason looking handsome and polished in his tuxedo. I'd sat in the second row, listening to the vows, and wondering if my sister truly loved this man, or if she loved what he represented. Status, security, success as our mother defined it. Now at the reception, I watched them move through the crowd, accepting congratulations with practiced grace. Brittany hadn't spoken more than 2 sentences to me all day, but I caught her eyeing my dress with confusion. Ladies and gentlemen, the wedding planner announced, please take your seats for the family toasts. I found my place at the family table, next to Mom and across from Brittany and Jason. The father of the groom spoke first, warm, witty, welcoming Brittany to their family. Then it was Mom's turn. She stepped up to the microphone, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. When my husband died, she began, her voice thick with emotion, I worried about our girls. But I needn't have. Brittany threw herself into her studies, getting straight A's, scholarships, internships, making something of herself despite the hardship. My hands clenched around my napkin as she continued. And then there's Elena. She turned toward me, her smile tight. My eldest. She's taken a different path. The pause was cruel in its length. Not everyone is meant for greatness, I suppose. But she's here supporting her successful sister, and that's... She searched for a word. Nice. Gasps and uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the crowd. I sat frozen, face burning, as Mom continued her speech, focusing entirely on Brittany's accomplishments. When Brittany took the microphone, I thought it might get better. Instead, it got worse. I want to thank my big sister, she said, her voice saccharine. Elena always told me to follow my dreams, even though she gave up on hers. She raised her glass toward me. Thanks for showing me what settling looks like, so I never had to. The laughter that followed was like acid on an open wound. 4 years of sacrifice. 4 years of working until my hands bled. 4 years of paying bills so she could have the education I'd abandoned. Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally broke. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Without a word, I walked to the stage. Brittany's eyes widened as I approached the microphone. Mom shook her head frantically, but it was too late. I took the microphone from its stand, my hand steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. I'd like to say a few words about family, I began. The room fell silent as I stood at the microphone. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, curious, uncomfortable, waiting for whatever scene was about to unfold. Mom had gone pale. Brittany was whispering urgently to Jason, who looked confused. 4 years ago, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Our father died after a 9-month battle with cancer. He left us with memories, love, and unfortunately, a mountain of medical debt that his insurance didn't cover. I took a sip of water, noting the way the Reynolds family leaned forward slightly, not used to hearing about financial struggles so openly discussed. I was halfway through my business degree at Boston University when we realized someone had to start earning real money. Mom had already returned to work, but it wasn't enough. I looked directly at Brittany. And my sister was just starting her first year at Harvard Law. Someone had to make sure she could stay there. Brittany's perfect makeup couldn't hide her growing alarm. So I left school. I took any job I could find. Barista in the mornings, house cleaner in the afternoons, retail at night. 3 jobs, 7 days a week, for months that turned into years. I turned to face the crowd more fully, standing taller. But that's not actually the story I came up here to tell. I smiled, feeling something unfurling inside me. Relief, maybe, or freedom. While working those jobs, I started making jewelry. Small pieces at first, selling online. I taught myself design, photography, marketing, everything I needed. Mom was shaking her head, clearly thinking I was embarrassing myself by talking about some little hobby. 2 years ago, that small hobby became Luna Spark Designs. A ripple of recognition moved through the room. I saw several women instinctively touch the jewelry they were wearing. My designs, my creations. Last month, Luna Spark was featured in Vogue as one of the top emerging luxury brands in America. Next week, I'm signing a deal to place my collections in every major department store in the country. Gasps echoed around the ballroom. Mom's mouth had fallen open. Brittany looked like she'd been slapped. And this wedding? I gestured around the ornate room. This Reynolds Don't Cut Corners extravaganza? I paid for it. The silence was deafening. When Jason's parents mentioned they'd split costs with the bride's family, my mother panicked. She came to me crying, saying she'd be humiliated. So I wrote a check. I paused, letting the information sink in. A check from the account of the daughter she just called a disappointment. The daughter who settled. From the corner of my eye, I saw William Reynolds, Jason's uncle and a major figure in Boston's business community, nodding slowly, recognition dawning on his face. "Miss Parker?" he called out, rising from his seat. "Elena Parker? Of Lunaspark?" I nodded. "I sit on the board of the Boston Entrepreneurial Council. Your company was shortlisted for Startup of the Year." More murmurs swept through the crowd. The narrative was shifting before my eyes. "That's right," I confirmed. "We're also the anonymous donor who established the scholarship fund for young entrepreneurs at BU last month." I looked back at my sister and mother, both frozen in shock. "I never told you about my success because you never asked. You were too busy being embarrassed by me to notice what I was building." My voice finally cracked, just a little. "I kept waiting for you to see me, really see me, but you only saw what you expected to see. Failure." I placed the microphone gently back in its stand. "Congratulations on your wedding, Brittany. I wish you and Jason every happiness." I walked off the stage to stunned silence. Then something unexpected happened. Someone started to applaud. Then another person, and another, until the entire ballroom was filled with the sound. I made it halfway across the ballroom before Jason's uncle intercepted me, hand extended. "Miss Parker, William Reynolds," he said, though I already knew who he was. "Your moonstone collection was my wife's anniversary gift last month. She hasn't taken those earrings off since." I shook his hand, acutely aware that every eye in the room was still on me. "Thank you. I design each piece myself." "Remarkable craftsmanship," he nodded. "We should talk. My investment group has been looking to expand our portfolio in sustainable luxury goods." Before I could respond, Jason appeared at his uncle's side, looking between us with newfound interest. The calculating reassessment in his eyes was unmistakable. "Elena," he said carefully, "I had no idea. Brittany never mentioned your company." "Brittany didn't know," I replied simply. Confusion flickered across his face. "But the wedding, if you paid for it." "I made arrangements directly with the venue after your mother sent the invoices to my mother." I smiled tightly. "Family helps family, right?" His expression shifted as he processed what this meant. That his new bride had mistaken kindness for weakness, success for failure. That she'd mocked me publicly while unknowingly standing in a room I'd paid for. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to have a conversation about honesty in our new marriage." Across the room, I could see Brittany frantically whispering to our mother, both of them shooting glances my way. Mom looked shell-shocked, her perfect image of our family dynamic crumbling before her eyes. As I moved through the reception, people who had barely glanced at me during the ceremony now approached with business cards and congratulations. A woman wearing one of my signature necklaces asked for a selfie. The whispers had changed from pitying to impressed. I stepped onto the terrace for air, gazing out at the Boston skyline, the same view I saw from my office window every day. "Why didn't you tell me?" I turned to find Mom standing there, her makeup smudged from crying. "Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. She flinched. "Of course I would have." "Really?" "Because when I tried to tell you I was starting a small business 2 years ago, you told me to stop wasting time on crafts and apply for a manager position at the coffee shop." Her silence confirmed my words. "You never saw me, Mom. You saw Brittany's supporting character, the daughter who existed to make the other one look better by comparison." "That's not fair," she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Isn't it? When was the last time you asked about my dreams, my plans? When Dad was alive, he believed in me. After he died, no one did." I swallowed hard. Not even you. Elena, it's okay, I interrupted, suddenly tired. I don't need your belief anymore. I prove myself all on my own. As if on cue, the wedding planner appeared. Ms. Parker, there are some guests who'd like to speak with you about your jewelry line. Mom's eyes widened at the respect in the planner's voice. Something fundamental had shifted, not just in how others saw me, but in how she would have to see me from now on. I straightened my shoulders and smiled. I'll be right there. For the first time in years, I walked away from my mother with my head held high, leaving her to reckon with the daughter she never really knew. 3 weeks after the wedding, I sat in my corner office overlooking the harbor, reviewing designs for the spring collection. The glass wall behind me displayed the Luna Spark logo, a crescent moon cradling a star. Dad would have loved it. My assistant knocked on the door. Your mother is here, again. This was the 4th time this week. After the wedding, Mom had cycled through shock, denial, and now desperate attempts at reconciliation. Or perhaps access to my success. Send her in, I said, closing my laptop. Mom entered, clutching her designer purse, the same one she'd been carrying for years. Only now I recognized it as a knockoff. So many illusions had fallen away since the wedding. Elena, she began. I've been thinking about what you said, about me not seeing you. I gestured for her to sit, keeping my expression neutral. We'd had variations of this conversation already. I want us to be a family again, she continued. I've been looking at condos in your building. There it was, the real reason for her visit. Mom, we've discussed this. I'm not buying you a condo. Her face fell. But I'm your mother, after everything I've done. That's just it, I interrupted gently. What have you done? You took every sacrifice I made and twisted it into evidence of my failure. That's not fair. I raised you girls alone after your father. Dad died 4 years ago, Mom. Not when we were children. She fell silent, her tactics exhausted. Without financial incentive, her interest in rebuilding our relationship seemed to wane. She left shortly after, promises to call hanging empty in the air. Later that afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Elena? It's Brittany. Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow. After the wedding, she and Jason had left immediately for their honeymoon. I'd heard through family friends that they'd returned early. How was Bali? I asked, keeping my tone professional. We didn't stay in Bali. She hesitated. Jason asked for some time apart. He says he needs to reconsider whether our values align. I said nothing, waiting. I keep thinking about what you said at the wedding, about waiting for someone to see you. Her voice cracked. The truth is, I always saw you, Elena. I saw your talent, your intelligence. It terrified me. Why would that terrify you? Because I've been copying you my whole life, she admitted. Every time you got praise for something, I'd try to do it better to get the same attention. When you left school, it was the first time I didn't have to compete with you. I got to be the star. It was perhaps the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. I don't know how to be around you now, she confessed. Maybe, I suggested, we could start by just being sisters. No competition, no pretending. For the first time in years, the silence between us held possibility instead of judgment. Spring came early to Boston that year. I'd moved into a new apartment, a spacious loft in an old textile factory that now housed artists and entrepreneurs. Floor-to-ceiling windows filled the space with light, illuminating my workbench where I still designed each prototype myself, despite having a full production team. The doorbell rang. Brittany stood on the other side, holding a small paper bag. Cinnamon rolls, she explained, offering them awkwardly. From that place near Dad's old office. You used to say they were the best in Boston. I let her in, surprised she remembered that detail. It had been 2 months since our phone call, with only cautious text messages between us. Nice place, she said, looking around. Very you. I made coffee while she wandered, studying my framed magazine features and design awards with genuine interest. Jason and I are officially separated, she announced suddenly. I'm moving out next week. I turned to face her. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's better this way. She sat at my kitchen counter, absently turning her wedding ring. I realized I married him for the same reason I went to law school. Because it's what everyone expected of the successful daughter. And what do you want? I asked, placing a mug before her. She looked startled by the question. I don't know. No one's ever really asked me that before. She paused. I've been thinking about going into family law, helping people who really need it, not just corporate clients. We sat in silence, drinking coffee as morning light streamed through the windows, casting long, hopeful shadows across the floor. I saw Mom yesterday, Brittany said finally. She's dating some financial advisor now. Told him all about her entrepreneurial daughters. I laughed despite myself. Of course she did. She'll never really change, Brittany acknowledged. But maybe we can. After she left, I returned to my workbench, turning over a new design. A pair of complementary pendants, 1 moon and 1 star, connected by a delicate chain that could be worn together or separately. Different but linked. My phone chimed with a message from my assistant. Forbes interview confirmed for next week. They want to feature you in 40 Under 40. 4 years ago, I'd sat in a tiny bedroom, stringing beads together by lamplight, unseen and underestimated. Now, my designs adorned celebrities and were displayed in high-end boutiques across the country. The new scholarship program I'd established at BU for students facing financial hardship had just accepted its first recipients. I looked out at the Boston skyline, the same city where I'd once felt invisible. So much had changed, yet something essential remained the same, that quiet determination that had carried me through those dark years. A text from Brittany lit up my phone. Lunch next week? My treat this time. I smiled and typed back. Looking forward to it. Some wounds would take longer to heal than others. Some bridges would need to be rebuilt entirely. But for the first time since Dad died, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, fully seen, standing in my own light, and it was more than enough.